Welcome to Shutter and Flow. Today we're going to talk about stock photography. A lot of people that Jeremy and I both know do actually take images that they've shot previously, upload them to stock sites. We're going to go over kind of the big players in the game, which most people should know about, and some strategies or maybe some other things you haven't thought about if you do want to go that route. And then we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not we actually even think it's worth doing it, especially in today's climate. So let's start with the companies. So stock photography has changed a lot over the years, and there's still some really big players in the game. And basically, you've got Shutterstock, Adobe Stock now, and you've got Getty and iStock. So Shutterstock is still the biggest stock, I don't know, repository, the marketplace, and by volume and number of buyers, like it's still the biggest. So if you're looking for the biggest marketplace, it's basically still Shutterstock. However, Adobe Stock is really becoming the favorite of a lot of designers, especially because of the way that the Adobe, like the way you're able to actually have credits and buy them, and it works directly through your Adobe accounts. So that's kind of quickly becoming a larger marketplace, especially for maybe high end stuff. And then you've got iStock and Getty, which kind of the same as Shutterstock, honestly. It's just kind of dealer's choice. And then you have a lot of smaller marketplaces, which are a little bit more niche. Jeremy, have you had any experience with any of these actual companies? Have you ever put any of your images in stock?
No, I have not, and mainly because of what my job was previously. It's like I worked for a large corporation. They own the rights to the images. In fact, I have found some of my own images on these stock sites that my former company, they're like, oh, we don't use these anymore. They're sitting there for a show or whatever it may be, and they put them on. Um, but I think it's a good opportunity, what we talked about with backing up all your stuff, using your NAS system. I've been thinking about going through my archives of old stuff that's some of it may be relevant, some of it might not be. But I thought about going through when I'm cleaning everything out and deleting stuff and just might as well just throw that stuff up there on one of these sites or a few of these sites. I don't think it's going to make a lot of money ever, but I think over time it could bring in a little bit of stuff that would have just been sitting on a hard drive anyways.
Yeah. And so this is the end of the year for most people when by the time this comes out. And we just talked about file management, file storage, all of those kind of things. So this kind of ties into that a little bit, where at the end of every year, if you're going in and doing some additional cleanup on everything that you've shot for the year, if you are really organized, you can quickly have a stock options portfolio that you kind of set aside. And then when you are slow during the year, you can just take some time and go in and do this. I don't 100% think it's always a good idea, depending on what you shoot. Because, like you said, if you're doing a lot of commercial work, entertainment, things like that, you may not have the rights to use those images for stock. However, if you travel a lot, shoot a wide variety of things, or you tend to shoot a lot of images that you think might be good for stock, then it is something you could consider. And just as a, if you don't have any idea how these things work, basically, stock photography, it's 50% of you actually dealing with having the images to put up, and 50% of it is you actually having to add in metadata and keywords for all of these images, which is time consuming. So don't assume that it's as simple as dragging and dropping a bunch of photos on a stock site and that you're going to make money. It is time consuming to add all the keywords and everything in there. So if you have a lot of images that you would keyword with the same thing, it could actually be kind of quick. But let's say that you have some landscapes and cityscapes and some portraits of people and just a wide ranging type of work, and you don't have big buckets of those things, keywording might take a lot of time. But if you do it right and you actually keyword everything correctly, upload it to a large stock site like Shutterstock, you can expect somewhere between anywhere from like 25 cents to $3, and that's on royalty free. So the way most of these stock sites work is you upload your images, somebody that purchases them as royalty free, which means you get a one-time payment of whatever they pay you. There are, I believe, only still through Getty. There might be some other ones that do it, but that you can actually have a rights manage option. So instead of it just being a single royalty free time, they can actually manage the rights and usage of that image. If that happens and you have a really high quality work, you can actually make really good money off of those images because they're not just licensed outright, but they might have to pay you for the distribution of the image. So that's only going to work for a really small number of people that are shooting, and the images are probably going to be really high quality. So all in all, if you upload occasionally, not many photos, I wouldn't expect to make much money. If you have 20 years of images that you can use and upload and spend some time over the course of the next couple of years uploading those things, you can actually end up getting a few hundred to several $1,000s a month, depending on if the images are actually being used and downloaded. So it is kind of a nice little side thing you could do. It is, in my opinion, a side hustle for photographers and should not be one of the things that you focus a lot of time and energy on. I would only focus on it if you have a lot of images that you think can be used and a lot of things that you can kind of do quickly and in big batches.
Yeah, I think there's potentially some new things with Lightroom that can help you with the keywording. And I think there are ways to do that quicker. But yes, especially when you get into Getty images, they have a very specific, and I think iStock is the same way. The keywording and the description is very specific. It goes kind of like Getty, how they shoot all their events. They have to overly write out what is in the image. So it can take a lot of time to do it right, and it might just be a waste of time. But it's one of those, if you have some downtime and you can knock some of them out in a batch, I would definitely. But I'll tell you what, I'll be the experiment. I will try this with some stuff. And now it's just a matter of picking where are we going to do this for.
Yeah.
And I found there's been a few new smaller ones that have popped up. Stills is one of them, and it's stills.com. And then Cavan, I guess Cavan, Cavan,
Sounds like a van.
images.com. Both of these, they're a little more, when you look at it, everything's a little more creative. They're both described as licensing authentic photos. They're all more about the artist who is doing it as opposed to just generic location and generic things like that. So you can even go in and pick a certain person if you want to on these. So it kind of balances between a stock site that could also work not fully as an agent, but it's like it's another place for people to discover you. Now, all of these are trying to sell memberships that give you more access, but then that also gives you more of the percentage of the money too. So it's that balance. You have to see how much you're making, if it's worth doing it or not. Um, but I think what I need to do is just pick one when I'm going through all my stuff and just go for it and see what happens. I don't think I'm going to make a lot of money off of this. Um, but like a great example, my the local newspaper here, the Atlanta Journal Constitution, AJC, has hired me twice to go shoot basically stock imagery, but very specific for them. So it's a higher end version of it because they went on all these sites looking for images that they wanted to show Atlanta for their marketing campaigns to get more people to sign up. And it's just not there. And I recommend doing that. Think of something in your city, go on, Google it, and see what comes up. And there's not a lot. So I have a bunch of images left over from that they had a limited number. I have some good images that are just going to be sitting there that I could immediately throw on drone stuff, sunrise, sunset, different types of light of Atlanta specific that we could see if it does anything.
Yeah. So you brought up something when you were talking about these two kind of newer companies. There are a lot of companies out there, but you brought up authenticity. So that is kind of a trend I think that's going to come up in the next year. AI has taken over stock. So that's something that you should be fully aware of, that stock photography was definitely more profitable pre AI. Now that a lot of designers or companies can quickly just build something in AI, it can look sort of what they want or exactly what they're looking for without having to pay for stock photography. It made it easy and it's taken away a lot of people using stock photography. But there are a lot of companies and people looking for authentic, actual photographs because there's been a little bit of a backlash of everything being AI slop these days. So it is potentially something that if you already have the images, they are just sitting on your hard drive somewhere or hopefully a NAS system, and they're just sitting there. If it doesn't cost you anything to upload them other than a little bit of time and putting in some keywords, if you have time, I don't think it's a bad idea to play with it, especially if you have a lot of high quality, really good images and if they're not super generic. If all you have is travel photos of the Grand Canyon, you probably aren't going to make a single dollar from uploading them. But if you have a lot of images, like Jeremy said, of any town you live in or city you live in, and you do have a lot of those images, why not? Right. And throw up the ones of the Grand Canyon while you're at it if you have them. But as long as if you think that it's marketable, basically, and you're going to have to add in keywords for stuff in there. And so it's going to take a little time. But if you can batch it, then why not give it a shot? I would say I would probably suggest to try something in which you are not spending any money and see what happens. However, if you are highly niched, let's say you're an automotive photographer, I would do a little research online and see if there is any stock agencies which specialize in that type of photography, because there are. There are definitely stock agencies that specialize in probably every type of photography. And so you might actually have a better ability to get it in front of a target audience or a target market that is looking for those things specifically. Like a designer, if they do all food or autos or something else, they probably have some of those bookmarked and look for them when they're looking to build something. So it's a good thought to do that as well. I don't know what all the rights are in terms of being able to place your images on multiple sites, but what if it's different images and you test out a couple? That's another idea, right? If you have a single shoot and a bunch of images in that shoot that could work, you could say, okay, I'll upload these five to this site, and then I'll try a little bit more of a niche one with another one. And if you have enough and you upload a few hundred to each one, you can see which one works better for you. As long as you're not spending a bunch of money out of pocket to join memberships, I think that's probably smart. The membership sites might work better. I don't know.
Yeah,
You're
they
gonna have to
definitely
try
give a
them out.
higher percentage. And it's like I'm looking on stills.com right now, and you go on in categories, and it is it's very nice looking stuff. They have a whole aerial drone category. They have a transportation, sports. There's some very well done stuff that I see a few on here that are definitely illegal with their drone. Something that you cannot fly your drone over the Golden Gate Bridge like that. But which does bring up another point. Some of these sites you need, if there's a model in it, you need to make sure you have a model release. If it's whoever on the street, you can kind of get away with it. But even then, if they want to use it for marketing materials,
Yeah, they'll need a
you need a
release.
model release. So there may be an opportunity where you have this image and it would limit, because most people don't walk around getting model releases, but it could limit it a little bit. Or there are some private properties that you need a property release, things like that. But you it's hard to regulate. That is the real
Yeah,
honest
it's a
answer.
little hard to regulate, so let's call it a gray area. I would say probably rule of thumb, if it's a portrait of somebody or there's obviously models shot, definitely have a model release and know that you have that model release somewhere before you start to think about selling it for stock. But if it's a public area, public sites, not probably no issue there. And if it's like a private, very noticeable building, if it's a company's corporate headquarters, you're probably going to need some sort of release if you're going to try to sell those images for stock. I think it's um do a little research into what you would need to release for. But in general, I think most of the stock images that people probably have sitting that they've never uploaded, if you look through it, you could probably find a lot of work really quickly that you don't need a release for. And you could just take a stab at trying it before dealing with all the releases. And you can have an image bucket that you're like, okay, these things I'm unsure of, but I can look into them if something starts to sell and I start to make a little money. I mean, think about it this way. Let's say you upload 100 to 1,000 images and those sit for a year. You might even forget that you did it until you do get a check, or no, it's not a check these days, but you'll get some amount of money that's distributed to you and you forget about it. It can be a small amount of money, but the fact that you didn't have to do any additional work to get a small amount of money is kind of nice. Think of it like royalties in a movie, right? So, um, I would kind of think of it that way. It's something that you would do on the back burner. It's something you're not going to put a ton of time and effort into. And then if you start to make a little money, you might decide, hey, I can do this maybe once a quarter or once a year, do a little bit more uploading or something and just kind of let it sit. But with AI, we'll definitely notice some big shifts and trends, kind of big swings. It might be that stock does terrible in the next year or two, and then it does really well because people actually want the authenticity. So I would also kind of think about that where if your expectation is to make money fast, avoid stock photography at all costs, right? Go get clients. If your goal is to maybe make a little money on the things that you've already shot, you don't care exactly how much money that is, you just kind of hope that it comes in a little bit, then great, do it.
Yeah, and I think it's anything you can think of these that are the more almost one-off. Like I'm thinking about, I have all these photos of volcano erupting in Hawaii. Okay, it's very specific. It's nature. It's like things that are happening in the moment in real time that aren't. I think the days of people used to go in the studio, hire a model,
Hmm.
and shoot a bunch of generic. I always think about the old guy meme because that's what
Yeah.
that shoot came from, was like the old guy with the grumpy face. That came from a that dude was doing stock photography all day. And if you look up, you can find all these images of that guy doing all these different things just for stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That
feel
used to
like
be a
that's
thing. It used
dead.
to be a
Yeah,
thing.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that's not needed anymore. And people don't want it to be that generic also. So I think it's an opportunity to do something in a style that looks unique and put it out there and see if it does anything. If it otherwise, is it just sitting on your hard drive, wasting space and not at least print it on your own wall or something? Do something
Yeah.
with it.
Do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's just sitting and you're never going to do anything with it and a client doesn't need it, delete it or do something with it, right?
Yeah,
But
and this came up also because a good friend of mine who has a golf specific thing, he needed to build out a website. They needed high end golf course photos. I have a bunch of those just from when I go play a golf course. I will take pictures because I enjoy doing it. They were just sitting on a hard drive. He called me. He goes, "Hey, can I pay you a license fee?" So it's basically using it as stock. He's like, "Can I just pay you to send me a Dropbox of a bunch of images for our website?" I'm like, "Of course, here." And I just like, I overdid it with him because he's a good friend. But that's where it came up with. I was like, oh, I have these shots. I might as well do something with them.
but yeah, this is a good time of year to do it, right? January is going to be slow for a lot of people. December is always slow. So good time of year to just clean everything up. And if you want to look into something or do a little research, stock photography is always one of those kind of fun little things. It's something you can play with without having to have a lot of skin in the game.
Yeah. Just all you have to do is manage your time right so you're not sitting here all day on computer doing keywords.
Yeah, 100%. If you are one of those people that loves metadata, which I've only met a handful in my
They
entire
do
life,
exist.
they do exist, and they usually work in the dam systems and things like that. But unless you're one of those people, you probably don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time entering in keywords and metadata things for stock. But if you do, then, have at it.
Sweet. Well, I will do an experiment. I will start getting some stuff on here on one of these. We'll figure it out and we'll report back in a few months of how it's going.
Yeah. And next week, we'll probably talk about some sort of more end of the year kind of wrap up things and maybe some trends that we see coming up in the next year.
All right. Talk to you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.